All right. This is May 13th, 2009, 4:03 at the Mooresville Public Library. This is the Fire Department's Oral History Interview number 11 with
Dennis Nantz. I go by Denny.
All right. Tell us how you got started.
Well, I started on the fire department in July of 1970 as a volunteer. I was actually told I couldn't get on the fire department because my brother was on there, and he said that brothers could not be on there. But Sam Deaton, which is probably the longest on the fire department I know of,
Yeah.
Sam asked my dad about it, and he said, well, that's not true. And so he got me an application, and I got on the fire department, and I was on as a volunteer for 9 years. And I got on paid in 1979. And at that time, we had four fire trucks and 4 ambulances. And when you got on when you got on the volunteers, you had to be on the rescue squad. Couldn't be on one without being on the other. So when I got on full time, we had 4 ambulances and 4 fire trucks.
Wow.
And when you were on duty, you had a captain, and you had 2 guys on the ambulance, 2 on fire duty. But it never did work out where you was on fire duty because the ambulance took priority over everything. So basically, when the first ambulance went out, the crew was on fire duty was on the next one. And somebody had to be called back in at that time. Everybody had to be called back in.
Okay.
And that was basically done with a pager. And most everything we picked up on the ambulance at that time, Lowrance was liking a lot of things. So if it was anything other than a Band-Aid, we had to take them out of town. Especially if it was a fracture. If we picked up a fracture, we didn't even bother going to Lowrance. We'd get it out of town because that's where they're going to wind up anyhow. And we had to go to Charlotte all the time. I mean, lots of times we'd go 12 o'clock going to Charlotte. We'd get back up in the morning. And so the people on duty, on fire duty, well, they were on ambulance duty then. So it was always basically ambulance more than it was fire. But when I got on, especially the volunteers, we had a lot of older fellows, which I wound up being one of them. But they taught us a lot of stuff, and played a lot of jokes on you, and it was really good. It was a real good brotherhood. And I will say it's probably the best job I ever had. Well, I know it's the longest job I ever had. And I used to love to come to work. It turned out to be a little different toward the end of my career, but used to love to come to work. And the problem was when we had one station, then we went to 2 stations, and then as it got bigger and bigger, the people you started with, then they wound up being an officer in charge of a shift, and so then you were separated from them. The people that you were used to depending on, the ones that you knew had your back. And you had their back, and so you didn't have to worry about who's going to take care of you. But as you got your own shift, and you had a bunch of new people, and you had to build from there, and it was kind of trying. But I was lucky to have quite a few good people. One of them sitting here right now. He actually wanted to be on my shift. I don't know why, but we had a pretty good time. Like I say, it was a good job, and I did enjoy coming to work all the time. We had a lot of at Station 1. We were in there with the police department, and we knew everything that was going on in the neighborhood with the police and the fire. And actually, some of the guys rode with the police if they had to, and then we had the policemen drive ambulances for us. I remember one boat wreck we had on Lake Norman, and it was 2 boats ran together, 4 people involved, and me and Ron Wilson, which was my captain at the time, went on that call, and we had one dead when we got there, and we had we had all 4 ambulances at that scene before it was over with, because we had 4 victims. And I brought a girl in, and Frank Owens drove the ambulance. And he was on the police department. But this lady had her arm almost cut off at the elbow where the propeller run over it. And then we had another one that her hip was all cut up. It was a disaster. And we had, I can name, I could talk all day about the ambulance trips. I mean, there was quite a few of them. Mitchell Mayhew, which also wound up being a captain, he and I, believe it or not, worked together or were on the same shifts together, not in different departments, our whole career. But we took a premature child to Charlotte, and it stopped breathing on the way. And I was in the back with the nurse, and we were bagging the kid, and the ambulance blew up. And we had to call Charlotte Life Saving, and they had not much more than a garbage truck. That's what they had for an ambulance. But anyway, they called, and we were lucky because we had a respiratory therapist that was on that unit, and a pediatric nurse, and the kid's still alive, to my knowledge, right now.
Wow.
And, we just had a lot of good times. On the ambulance, basically, and I know I'm talking a lot about ambulance, but primarily the bulk of our work was ambulance stuff. And we actually, the rescue squad is great right now, but back in those days, we actually would go to the wreck, and we would be on the way back before we would meet the rescue squad on their way. I mean, that's just the way it worked out. And we didn't have all the equipment they got now. We had a hacksaw, a hammer, and not much else on the ambulance. And that's how we got into the cars where they would cut the roof off or whatever with a hacksaw. And we just did what we had to do to get the job done. But the fire thing, we had pull boxes that time, and believe it or not, we had quite a few policemen that liked to pull the boxes, and they wouldn't admit it, but we know they did it just to get us out of bed. And so the whole organization was kind of a brotherhood. Everybody liked everybody, and they played pranks, and of course, I guess they wouldn't do it now and get away with it, but it was a different time and a different world at that time.
Yeah.
Like I say, I served for. I retired in 2004 and had a great retirement party, which I didn't want to do, but I did, and I really got roasted quite a bit, and I got over it though. But I had some real great guys, and I think they respected me, and I respected them. And that's what it's all about.
You remember your first fire?
The first fire. I don't remember the first one, I don't think, but I remember one down on Hager Road, and we had the old 52 Ford, and some reason the wiring was all screwed up on that truck, and you sit there while it was pumping, and the headlights would blink. And I do remember that. And the power lines was down in the grass, and they were sparking fire everywhere. I do remember that call quite a bit, but that's when used to call him Radar. Larry Swain was on there, and then that's when Matt Thompson was on, and Johnny Bumgarner. That's quite a few old ones there. And we didn't have any Pierce fire trucks or something like they got now. We had Pete bought Howies all the time. We had Howie fire trucks, and one of them, I think, you still use the old yellow one.
It's fixing to be retired now.
I fought a lot of fire with that truck. In fact, we fought the worst fire we had while I was on was the Western Honda downtown, which was set. And that was the first line truck that went in on that one. It was yellow at the time.
Wow.
Eventually had it painted red, but I drove the 06 Tooling, and I know Cam remembers that. And we only had enough water downtown. I could only supply one line. And then we had Statesville come in with their ladder truck, and I would pump my truck to that so they would have water. And gosh, I guess that fire went on for about 24 hours while they were investigating it and everything, and did discover it was set. And but you could see the fire out on Main Street when we left the station. When we turned out on Main Street, you could see the fire. That'd be 3 or 4 blocks away. It was a big fire, big fire.
It was a big fire.
I don't know. We had a lot of good times. A lot of good people.
What are some of your more memorable moments?
I don't know.
Good memorable moments. Well, you know.
The pranks we played, that was great. You know, we I guess, back at the station, when the ambulance came in, we had to clean it up and everything. And sometimes we had them, and they were so bloody. I mean, we had to use a fire hose to wash them out. I mean, that's the honest truth. And, but when it was all said and done, we just went on and did what we had to do. But we made some little cannons one time, and we shot those things out of drink cans. And then when I went on vacation, it seemed like everything happened, and that's when Mitchell Mayhew about cut his finger off when playing with those cans. But he used a dog food can, and somebody Doy Baker got the wise idea about putting oxygen in with the lighter fluid we put in there, and when it did, it really was a ball, man. So I come back, and he had a heck of a time explaining that to the workman's comp or whatever the insurance people were. And, but we used to cook breakfast on Saturdays. The mayor would always come in. He'd always pay for the breakfast. Joe Knoxall, he was number one. He'll always be number one in my book. But he'd come in and buy breakfast for you, and we'd make the breakfast. Police would come in and eat with us, and that kind of stuff. And you just knew what everybody was doing. And we just had a good relationship with the gas people. Tommy Caldwell, he worked for the gas company. If we did anything for the gas company, but he'd fix up an old stove, there's something to get taken out of the house and things like that. And we just did we actually picked furniture up off the street to put it in the lounge, believe it or not. Because when people would go buy you a rocking chair, he'd get you a $20 one at that time, which was, I guess, a lot of money, but it would fall apart. But if you want to test furniture, it's a place to do it at the fire department, because they really get a workout. There's plenty of stuff I probably can dig up, but just thinking of it offhand, it's kind of hard to do. But I know we had a lot of calls on the ambulance, and we'd get there like at the bad sections of town, and the police would always seem to hold back, and we'd get there before they did, and because they didn't want, I guess they didn't want to face it, So we'd go ahead and have to do what we had to do and get out of Dodge, and they come in. So it's just I'll think of a million things after I leave here, like Henry Sink did, but I could write a book about it.
Now, which one was your favorite truck?
Oh, that old Howie, for sure.
No, Howard?
Oh, yeah, you'd have to stand, you could actually stand up in there, changing the gears. It wasn't automatic.
You're right.
Yeah. I always could tell if we had a fire, if that truck was on the scene. I could hear it from my house. I could hear it, tell if it was pumping water. I mean, it had a certain sound, and you could tell that. And that's just like today. You know, unless you've been a fireman or a medic or something, you can tell the difference in the sirens and what is coming from an ambulance or a fire truck or a police car. And it's just something you pick up. You can tell by the tone. But back then, the early days, they had tappers. They didn't have all the paging systems they got now. You had a bell in your house, but I didn't have one, but Doug did. And then when the alarm system would strike the tone for the horn, they had a horn on top of the building, and it would blow the number of the call box.
Oh.
And when those boxes were taken down, a lot of the firemen got them. I got the one that was on at my neighborhood block. I actually had a neighbor that was in his yard. He thought he was going to get it, but he didn't get it. But they were dished out to people that owned the fire department, had a connection with them. And that was the way the system worked then. We were basically tied up in the summertime trimming limbs off the power, off the alarm lines. And that was part of the maintenance. And Pete had the telephone company do a lot of stuff for him at that time. That was one way you got on the fire department too. When Pete Pender was fire chief, she had a talent you could do something that Pete could benefit from. He was 90% there. And that's just the way the system was. It's not like it is now. I mean, how much degree you got.
Now, the first time y'all redid the 21 of France, you helped do that,
Oh yeah,
right?
the first time we did the 21, we had, might be wrong, I want to say we had $900. We stripped it down in the yard, and then we took it down to Dick Nance's garage, and I painted it in that garage. It wasn't in a booth, it was in the garage. And I actually, that was one of our talents. I could paint. So I painted one of the fire trucks in the, which is not there now, but it was in the town, the fire garage. And I painted the fire chief's car in the bays. And everything we did was illegal.
Now, was you on when the shotguns and the engines?
Yeah.
That was during the
I
rock
was a
time.
volunteer at that time. I was a volunteer, so I didn't drive the truck. But yeah, we actually had shotguns on the fire truck. Or they said, I was a volunteer, like I say, but you paid people. And basically, when you were volunteering then, you fought more fire than anybody because you only had two people on the truck, and they were operating the truck and making sure we had water supply. Other than that, the volunteers are the ones that actually did the fire suppression. But, all the volunteers are gone now.
All right, you wanted to find out where the call was, and you called them up. What was the password?
You called which was the police department dispatcher. All this stuff was dispatched through the police department. And you just called up, and when they answered, you said Brock. When you said Brock, they'd tell you what the address was. That was the code. If you didn't hear the number and you knew there was a fire going on. And so that's a little piece of history I guess a lot of people don't know. But
Well, we just finished with Bobby James right before you, and we was asking him where the word come from. He said that was a candy bar. He says it come from a candy bar.
I didn't know it came, but there was a candy bar for that.
He said that's where it come from, was the candy bar.
Actually, when I was interviewed to get on as a volunteer, we didn't have any conference room or any kind of room like that. I was interviewed sitting in a chair at the back of the fire trucks at Station 1, which is office space now. And Bobby James and Sam Deaton and a couple of people, I can't remember who all it was. I know Bobby was there. And that's where everything was done, in the floors behind the fire truck. We had limited space.
Because that was basically your day room and everything at that time, wasn't it?
Yeah, the day room we actually had, well, originally when Doug, before they fixed that room that the water department had, they just sat on the back of the trucks. When they fixed that room for a day room when the water department left it, we had a day room with a TV, we had a bath, we had a shower, commode, a stove, a refrigerator, and all this was in the same room except for a door that separated John from the stove. So you didn't want to go in that bathroom because they'd slide firecrackers over the door, no way out. And so if they knew you were in there, it was in trouble, they'd throw a firecracker over the door. And there's all kinds of stuff going on like that all the time. And you had to be able to adjust to it. It's just like anybody that don't know about the fire department. If you're in the fire department and you can't take a joke, then you're at the wrong place. Because if they ever find out anything that's going to bother you, they're going to ride you till it breaks. I mean, the least little thing, And I know early on, they knew everything about you, knew your family, knew your parents, everything was known. And if they found any little thing that bothered you, then they would use it just in a joking way. Not to hurt you, but you had to be able to roll with the punches and be able to dish it out again when it comes their turn. And that's the way it was. That's why I say it was a real tight brotherhood, real tight. And I don't know if it's that way now. They say too many and too spread out. It just couldn't be, in my opinion. Because I don't see how they could even know each other now.
You know how many people we're up to now?
It scared me to death.
82. That's counting administration and everything.
I can believe that.
We took over the police department. We're the most highest employed. Really.
Well, when I got on, we had 15 people. And we had probably 40, or I don't know how many volunteers, at least 40. And he's a bunch of great guys. Really was. And quite a few of them were people that worked in town, especially the volunteers, because that's where they had to leave their work and go fight a fire if they had to. We had people at the gas company, people that do power. We had Joe Gilly used to own the flour mill. A lot of the old businesses downtown, Paul Marr, and people like that were private citizens, but they had a business or worked for a business in the city limits, and they could leave that and answer the call. It's like, Sam Deaton, when I was a kid, before I even finished school, I'd see Sam leaving the commissary at the mill going to the fires. He'd come around in a 50 Chevrolet, he'd come around the corner going to the fires. Like I say, it used to be that they said a brother couldn't be on there with a brother, but they had sons, brothers, and before it's over with, everybody was, connected some way.
Would you do it all again?
Yeah, but I can't do it now.
Well,
like I say, I loved it.
If you would set normal, it would probably have been all right.
But when you retire, you seem to have medical problems, and I've told that. So all you guys that's going to retire, you got a lot to look forward to.
You see how he's sitting right now? Mm-hmm. That's not how he usually sits. Usually if he's not on the edge of the seat like he's sitting here, he's on the floor all curled up, just sitting there on his knees and everything. How he does it, I don't know. And he'll fall asleep like that too. He'll fall asleep standing up if you ain't careful.
I really feel like I did a good job for, for what it was, and I think I was appreciated, and that's what it's all about. I think you're on the side.
Well, like you said, you've told other firemen is here now. You told them years ago what to look for, and they've come up to you now and said, you know what you told me, you're basically right.
Yeah, I've had quite a few of them say, I have to eat my words. What you said was true.
Yeah.
I always get kidded about when we go to a call, and we always went by landmarks. We wasn't out as we were then. And they always kidded me about this down here for old John's store or something.
Yeah, he was bad about landmarks, trying to get you down
I pretty
landmarks.
much could tell them whether we were going to have a fire when we got there or not. If they saw me start putting my gear on, they knew that we were looking for trouble. Because if I didn't put it on, I pretty much was convinced that we were not going to have anything. But when they saw me dressing out, they started dressing out too. But it's based on history, and they always complain about history. We're all going to have history sooner or later.
Oh yeah, I'll be the same way. I'll say something.
It's very important, man. I used to think that was the worst subject in school, but I wished I'd paid more attention to it now.
We had one others that we interviewed say that, talk about history. He didn't care about in high school, but now he just loves the history.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But, just like me and Mitchell Mayhew, we worked together a lot of years, very close, a lot of years. And that's something you just can't toss out the door.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we've lost some good people, like Jeff Bowles. I had Jeff Bowles. And he was terrible to lose him.
Yeah, sure was.
Could have lost this guy right here.
Yeah, sure could have.
He was very sick today.
I think he saved my life that day by not sending him home.
I didn't send him home that day. And I think that's why he's alive today.
Yeah, I believe so.
But you see a lot of situations in that. And that particular instance with him, he couldn't have had more help. We had the ambulance there. We had both fire stations there. Just for no reason other than they just happened to be there. Just the luck of the draw, I reckon. And he had got sick that morning, and he came out, and we were all standing on a little pickup, I think, and Cam passed out. And he would have choked to death if he had been home. But Jeff was living at that time, and he was right in there, number one. He was a real good person that could diffuse an argument.
Oh yeah, Jeff was real good at that.
Yeah, he could take when two guys wasn't getting along, and he could be the mediator between them. He was really great at doing that. But,
We had one he had to mediate a lot.
we will go into that. But I told him you can, but everybody has a life, and you're not just a fireman. When you come to work, you brought your family here, you brought your parents here, or whatever. If there's some issue in your life, and you just can't put it aside completely, And so there's things that affect the way you operate on a daily basis in the fire department. And I think you have to be considerate, understanding that this guy really might have a problem we don't know about. And so I've always stressed that in the guys that was under me, I said, you got to understand that everybody, we got two lives here: the fire department and your personal life. And so, you got to make it all work. it's a hard job. You know, I know Doug had a hard job being chief because he got all the complaints. You know, he needs to get his shifts work. He got the whole department. And you can't please everybody. It just don't work that way. I think we did a pretty good job with what we had.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay. On that note, say, talking to the people of the fire department another 100 years from now, what would you want to pass on to them or have them remember or know that is the core of the Mooresville Fire Department, that makes the Mooresville Fire Department what it is?
Well, I think I'd say just what I said. We're dealing with people here. I mean, they're firemen, they're family people. We're dealing with an individual person. And, you know, everybody don't have a good day every day. So, you know, you have to be willing and able to adjust and make it work. And it's not impossible, but you know, you can, especially if you're the captain or in charge, you can pretty much tell if something's not right with a person. And especially if you've been with them for quite a while, you learn to read them pretty good. You know, when they come in the door in the morning, you know whether they got something else on their mind or whether they really are sick or not sick. You know, you just kind of learn how it works. I would say that, you know, that to me that's the main thing. You know, if you treat people as an individual person, and you know they're already trained, they know what to do about their job. And I always felt like, you know, if I had to tell somebody they did something wrong, that it was too late. They should have already known before we got that far. And, you know, I can't train a man to do something on the spot, but he should already know. That's just the part. You can't scratch your head and wonder. You have to, you know, when it's really, you're really tested, you're on the line. You got to do, and you know that you're doing it with people that you can trust and back you up.
Anything else?
Anything else you want to do? No ideas.
I'll think of plenty, you know. I got my mind on my hot rod right now. I'm going to a car show.
Let me tell you a story. One time, well, I got a bunch of stories I could tell about Denny. But so after we got to Station 2, and Station 2 wasn't it fairly new at that time?
Mm-hmm. You were the first ones in it.
Denny was he loves popcorn. Popcorn, he'd eat popcorn 24 hours a day if he could. The wooden table out there in the day room where we sat around and eat, he gets his popcorn. It usually makes it late afternoon, so he'd start making it. And then he didn't want to set it on the table, burn the table, so he sets it on the carpet and melts down through the carpet and sticks to the carpet and everything. We had to yank it up and all that kind of stuff. We had some good times with him.
Yeah, I had a 50-pound bag of popcorn.
Yeah, he had a 50-pound bag of popcorn in there. I don't know how long
I popped it all before I left until I had to get more.
That thing lasted forever, but he would feed us all. Then after we'd eat that, he'd go make more sometimes.
Golly. And y'all were the first into Station 2?
Yeah, we were the first ones in Station 2.
Wow. I forget how many years Denny was my captain now. It was 4 years better, wasn't it? I can't remember.
Yeah, because I was 2 years after Doug left. I was 2 years with Chief Green.
Yeah. So I had a good bit of time with Denny. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah, actually Cam helped us build Station 1. We actually built Station 1, which is the old Carolina Tire building.
Yeah. I came right there at the end.
We built that station while we were on duty. If the fire alarm come in, we jumped on the truck, dropped our hammers, and went. We built that station for very small amount of money in comparison to what construction costs.
Can you imagine what it would cost to do the same thing you did today? What it would cost if you did it?
No,
It'd be on the road.
yeah, I mean, but we were so glad to get a new place.
You won't do anything, wouldn't you?
But then, you still thought about, I should have stayed at the other place. I mean, we were really, the original station was, it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, we've outgrown the uptown now, so by leaps and bounds, we're just in there stuffed in there now.
Well, that's just like you talk about. The bigger it gets, the less chance you're going to get to be involved in the big fire or big
Yep.
rescue. The more people that are out there, then the chances are slimmer and slimmer.
Yep.
And my whole career, I've never involved, but really, I guess we'd say two. We went to an apartment fire, and we drug 2 people out of that fire over here off of
UNPR.
Huh?
UNPR? What was it?
BNPR and Dewey,
Yeah.
one.
You have one, saved one right here.
Oh.
And then we had we rescued 2 out of that one, and then the one we had at Lowe's Hardware with the kid that wasn't breathing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was my shift at that. That's when I had a shift. The other time we were on Ron's shift.
Mm-hmm.
And Ron's son's on the fire department now. Ron had a stroke and he passed away.
And that's whose job I got. Ron always used to say, the only way you're going to get a job here is somebody would die. And sad to say, he had a stroke and died, and that resulted in me getting his job. His son, David Wilson, is my engineer right now
Okay.
at Station 3.
It was really sad because Ron, he had a stroke and it completely just made him non-functional. But his mind,
It was still short.
his mind was still good, but he couldn't talk. And then he was involved in a wreck. After that, somebody broadsided his wife was taken him to the golf course, and we answered the call. We were on duty that day. So we knew him and knew the whole situation, everything that was involved. So it made it good that we was the ones that answered the call. His shift, his whole shift. But he eventually later on passed away. It's kind of rough watching the people you work with like that, knowing that they died and you're still here. So that's the way life works.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I could, if I had,
I know
if
you.
I had notes, I probably could write
You
a
probably
lot.
talk
I've always
longer.
said I could write a book about what happened, went on in the fire department. We always had breaks, like I say, the police department was next door. I'll never forget Bruce Kennedy coming when he got on the sheriff's department, coming out there, and he was so proud to be on the sheriff's department. Unfortunately, Bruce has passed away too, but PR said, "Let me see your gun, Bruce." And Bruce said, "Okay." He handed him his gun, so the PR just rips off around. And Bruce just about had a heart attack. And stuff like that went on.
Was you part of the counterfeit ring?
No, but I don't know when it happened.
Dean brought that up about
The
PR.
counterfeit.
Yeah.
The counterfeit.
I didn't know if you was there or not.
Made on the police department computer.
The payphone used to be outside the police department,
Yeah.
and they would go in there and call that payphone when there was people out there and start running their mouths to them and everything, get them all upset and everything.
Well, remember Mitchell Bryant and Ron, when Ron was living, and they were talking about who was the fastest runner. And Mitchell said, "I'll race you backwards." And so they lined up and took off, and Ron tripped. And he messed his arm up and everything. I eventually had to take him to the emergency room that night. But Mitchell didn't stop. He went ahead and touched the post of the finishing point. We had stuff like that going on all the time, you know. Back when they had CB radios, they used to hook up over to a tower that was over there behind the lawyer's office then and talk CB stuff and just all kinds of pranks that wouldn't even be tolerated now. But it was wonderful. You know, it didn't hurt anybody. You know, the job got done. I mean, you know, we did a lot of stuff. Made the can trailers. I remember I welded those can trailers up in the bay. You know, we took some flatbed trailers and welded the sides on them to all those cans. I had a tailgate down on a 5-gallon bucket, and then I went into the lounge and I come back out, and the whole place was on fire. Because the sparks off the welder had set the trash can on fire. Didn't burn anything, but set the trash can. But made a heck of a fire for a little bit.
Just think of all the cans that you have touched and gone through your hands pretty much. You know, we collect cans for the Burn Children's Fund.
Yep.
And we still do it to this day.
Yeah.
And so even myself, you know, it's no telling how many pounds of aluminum cans I've been involved in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now every station has a trailer that people can come up and just dump aluminum cans in.
Yeah. We've got one of the box recycles in the lounge.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
But Denny was a master of all. You know, he run a sign shop. He lettered the trucks. He painted. He welded. The turnout gear racks at Station 1, which are just now being removed because they redone the bays and everything, bought blockers now. Denny made all of them and everything. I mean, Denny's put a lot of work into the fire department. This is his second life. Family was here, and he spent a lot of time.
We never did have anything at the fire department. We made stuff if we had to.
Yeah.
We did our own thing if we had to. Like I say, you know, if we needed a stove, we'd tell Tommy and he'd find one the gas company had taken out of the house or vice versa. And, you know, we did with what we had and made it work. And even like another thing I can tell you, when it snowed, you know, when it snowed at Station 1, we had to put chains on all the fire trucks. Now the chains are mounted on the trucks and they just flip the switch. Well, we had to jack those trucks up, and we had chains that for dual wheels. I'm telling you, they weighed.
Oh, wait a minute! You didn't ever have to put them on. You always got sick.
I got sick. I always got sick when we did it. No, I did. I put on. I get sick before we finished. But you know, at that time, I take meals with the city manager, and we did the police cars, we did the town employees, we did all the cars, you know, everything. We put chains on them. But those fire trucks, we'd chain those up, and we'd leave them on if it was going to snow for a couple of days, and we just had them loose where we could drive out from under them. But that was a ride, taking a fire truck with chains on it. But we did it. You know.
And I bet change for those dual wheels were heavy.
Oh, they would, I can't imagine.
More than him.
Probably more than me.
You know, there's just another short one on the bunch. You know, they had three, and that was Denny, Doug, and Bobby. James said he had every set of gear that he's ever been issued.
Still, but nowadays there is no tailboard on a fire truck.
No.
But when I was on, you could ride the tailboard. And to me, I mean, if that don't get you adrenaline flowing, nothing will. To ride the tailboard with a fire truck. And the 52 we had, see, when you got on new, they didn't tell you all this stuff, but that truck had a door on the back of it. And so they'd put you on the tailboard, and they'd go over here on the Edgemore and go up that steep hill. Well, if you was standing back there, when they went up the hill, all that water in the tank started coming out the back door. And so you got drenched. And that's kind of stuff they did, you know, to initiate you pretty much. And that truck went to Guatemala, I think. Yeah. But, you know, we fought a lot of fires with that old stuff. And, you know, I remember when I first got on, they had what they call the booster ride, the red line they called it, you know, and we fought a lot of fires with just a booster ride. We didn't do any upper off jacket hose.
The bigger house.
We did the booster ride, if we could get it out with booster ride. You know, Dean Baker, you know, Tommy Caldwell will tell you how Dean got in it at the car fire. I was talking to him about, we had our pictures made, and he was talking about, you know, how he stepped between the two of us. Of course, Dean could have killed me. He was twice my size. But I was going to stand up against him. And we're still friends to this day. In fact, I'll see him tonight.
Yeah.
Well, how many hours do we need to go?
You're fine. You're good. Well, you have anything else?
I can't think of anything.
Okay, we're good. Well, like I say,